He is a gatekeeper for so many of the innovative practices that we all take for granted in the sports broadcasting world. It is the great Ken Aagaard. I guess he kind of has that mustache, which he's innovative for, in a way, infamous for, if you will. He's done that the course of his career. He's worked for just about every network out there. He helped found the SVG, the Sports Video Group, which does incredible work now and was all part of the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame. He's done great work there. We're going to talk about his career, pan left and right from the business side of his rise to also his personal life. So we're going to get the full picture here. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, and this is the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, and I'm on Twitter, of course, at Bryan Fenley. Ken, I appreciate you doing this. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. And as we dive into your career, obviously you've got so many different stories that you've amassed in your storied career and resume. When you write that book about it all, who do you want to write the foreword?
You know, that's a very interesting question. I've been so fortunate in my career to work with a lot of giants. I know you've spoken to Jeff Mason and David Hill, which are two of them. And those are two that I would very much like to have write a foreword. I would have said the late Don Ohlmeyer, who was someone who really elevated me to a different level, just in terms of, you know, what I did within the sports industry and how I was motivated. So I think there's the two names right there, though. I'll take Jeff Mason and David Hill any day, writing a foreword to anything that I would pen.
Well, let's go right to David Hill, because you were a big part of what Fox was doing in the early 90s, 1994, if I'm not mistaken. When he was asked about what you did during that time at Fox, he gave you a lot of praise. What is he getting at when he is showering you with compliments during that time?
Well, he's always referred to me as his insurance policy. I'll never forget when he first called me and he said, I, just heard that Fox had taken the NFL from CBS. I didn't work at CBS at the time. And, I was interested. And he said, can you help me? And it was so early on in the process. At that time, I was looking at studios and stages in New York for him. And then as we started to go through the process, this was like in February, and we were going to launch in September. It was like 8 or 9 months. And I had done the NFL for NBC for a lot of years. And David was well aware of that because I'd met him doing Wimbledon when we were at the NFL as well. And from an operational and technical point of view, an NFL Sunday is quite complicated. Multiple networks, games going on simultaneously. And I was the guy at NBC for a lot of years that figured out what went where, and drew up the maps, and technically and operationally try to figure out how to get the games wherever, and then to be able to innovate within that. So it's obviously one of the reasons that David looked to me. And then all of a sudden, voila, he said, Rupert called him, said, we gotta be in California. And I go, what? How's it? And we had like 6 months, and it was 6 of the craziest months maybe I've ever had in my career. We were just, Ed Gorin came on. I know you've talked to Ed, and it was just crazy. I mean, Hilly would have a staff meeting every morning at 8 a.m. I was in LA. I basically moved to LA for 6 months, and it was a ball. It was the funniest thing I've ever been involved with. It was the most serious thing I've ever been involved with, and I enjoyed that whole process immensely.
So you were there for a couple months, some formative years while at Fox. And of course, we are joined by Ken Aagaard, an all-timer in sports media. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. Another all-timer, you could say, David Hill. And then you've got, of course, Jim Nantz. And one of the things that he mentioned about you, Ken, is obviously your advancements in technology as it relates to broadcasting and everything you've done in that space for decades. But what he also pointed out, and part of the reason I wanted to have you on, is what you do to help others in this business. And that's something that Jim mentioned in a quote that he had when discussing you. And he said, that's what really truly makes you stand apart, is the care and the compassion you have for others. Why is that so big for you while you're doing this and building up your own career to build up those of others as well?
Yeah, for whatever reason, I've always felt that legacy is very important. You know, I was at NBC Sports, and then I had my own company, which I still have, and I still work. And then I went to CBS, and I always enjoyed the mentoring process. I'm on the advisory board for the School of Communication of Iowa, where I graduated. And all along, Iowa has been sending students to me, and I'd help place them. I've continued to help place students, which I really just get personal enjoyment out of. I think at one point I counted up some 20 students that I placed in ESPN through the years, as an example, because ESPN was a great place, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s, to put students into those kinds of environments. And I've always enjoyed that. And I like the teaching aspect, and definitely like the mentoring process. And I did that, you know, as I left NBC, and even as I left CBS, I wanted to develop people to follow me. And I always want them to be better. And I've been really lucky that I've been able to pull that off.
When you watch games that you're not affiliated with as a sports fan, say you're sitting on your couch or you're watching another network put something on, what is it like living in your head? Because I would think that the switch is always on for you, the right camera shot, everything. So you watching a sporting event, how is that different than a traditional sports fan watching an event?
Yeah, I think it'd be fair to say that my wife and some of my family go, "Do I want to watch these games?" Do that. You know, the past weekend with these playoff games have been unbelievable. And you know, meantime, I'm looking at somebody standing up in front of a camera, or the audio not working well on the anthem, and you know, suddenly at halftime you can't hear anybody because the PA is too loud, and you know, and you know, do they have a wireless mic or an RF mic, and is there interference? And yes, I can't help myself. You know, I'm always looking at how it's done, but I must say the games have been so compelling. It's hard not to get involved in the content of some of the NFL playoffs and in the last several weeks. It's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, the games have been exciting. The technology has been exciting. And obviously, Ken, you've been behind so much of this. Ken Aagaard is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. How far back do you trace your earliest signs of wanting to be on the forefront of things, being cutting edge, being innovative? How young were you when you started noticing those traits within you?
I grew up in Evanston, Illinois. I was maybe 5 years old. Black and white TV then. That's how old I am. A guy by the name of Jack Brickhouse was the local announcer for the Chicago Cubs and the White Sox. He did both of them. And I used to turn down the sound and do play-by-play. And, you know, I mean, I always wanted to be in sports broadcasting. And I was fortunate to go to an incredible high school north of Chicago called New Trier High School, that we had our own radio station. This was in the 60s. And I got to do play-by-play swimming, of all things.
Wow.
They were the always the state champions, and the natatorium would only fit 100 people, and the families wanted to know what their kids were doing. So we actually did radio. And that was my first start. You know, I'm not sure how many times when somebody was diving, I go, "Ooh, he just missed the ball." I mean, but it was fun. So right from the get-go. And then even in college, I did play by play, radio. I did hockey, I did baseball, I did basketball. But I realized I was pretty average as a talent. So, getting into the behind the camera was relatively easy for me, and something that was a goal of mine from the second I got out of school.
I know one place where you were not average, and that was when you had the opportunity of being a caddy for your daughter at St. Jude PGA Tour event in Memphis. Where does that experience rack up among all of your all-time grades?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was special. We found that our daughter had a brain tumor when she was 11 years old. When that happens to you as a family, it comes out of nowhere. I mean, we had no idea. And somehow, God helped us find St. Jude. And we ended up moving to Memphis for 8 months while she went through chemo and radiation. And by the way, she's at Purdue, and at Purdue, an engineering major.
Wow.
I was a freshman, doing quite well. So I'll just give you the end of the story. But getting there, of course, wasn't easy. And she loved golf. So, and I, even going back as early as 3 years old, I would take her to the driving range. And man, that girl had a swing, and it still does. So, we played golf, and that was, our thing is dad and daughter. And so to go back now and play in the pro-ams at the St. Jude fundraisers with my daughter and being able to caddy, I mean, words can't describe how important that is. And St. Jude's is so important to us. I mean, my wife and I speak at fundraisers all the time. And when we look back on it, it was a very difficult time, but we look back on it fondly. If you ask my daughter, what does she remember about St. Jude's? It was all good. She remembers it fondly. And so it's payback for everyone in the family when we get to go to any St. Jude event. And when I get to play golf or be a caddy for my daughter, can't beat it.
What sort of strength do you get from your daughter in seeing how strong and how tough she was during those moments?
She's special. All our kids are special. But what she went through and how she went through it, I'm just amazed. Her fortitude, her strength, her confidence never waned. And the truth is, when you go to St. Jude and you're in that hospital for 8 months, you would think it would be depressing. It's just the reverse, because all of these kids are tough. It's hard because they all don't make it. But many of them do. And because of St. Jude and because you see them make it, they inspire you. And I enjoy going back and seeing these families and seeing these kids persevere. And it's amazing what they do. And, my daughter was no exception. And I'm so proud of her, and proud of the whole family, for what she's been able to do, how she's been able to accomplish the things that she's done already in her young life. And I'm so excited about, her engineering levels and her scholarly levels. I mean, after she went through the radiation, they said that was going to affect her brain and her learning abilities. And she's just worked through all of it. It's been pretty exciting to watch.
Another one of her talents, she's a great artist as well. I don't want people to lose sight of that. You mentioned her perseverance. How has watching what she's done And in a way, following what you're doing a little bit, obviously from an engineering standpoint, there are commonalities, but how has her story and watching it and her rise out of it change your perspective on you and what you do in the business, from the way in which you operate, the way in which you run things?
Well, I'd like to think it hasn't really changed me, but as you think on it, of course it does. Something like this has to affect you. It certainly makes you more compassionate. It certainly makes you more understanding. And it makes you step back a little bit and look at where you are. I mean, and what all of us did in the sports, we work hard. We work all the time. And we always want to be the best. We want everything to work perfectly. And sometimes what gets lost, in those moments is that step back and take a look at, wait a minute, what are you doing? How are you treating people? Or, what is that overview? And, that was the kind of reflection I think that, that I learned at a definitely at a higher level is through that whole process with our daughter. It does make you think about things a little differently, and you appreciate everything a lot more.
Yeah, the gratitude is certainly a big power player in all this. And we're joined by Ken Aagaard. I'm Bryan Fenley. So what separates you? What's different between you as a family man, going all the way back to when you first became a father, to you working your what off in the business? And what's different about the Ken Aagaard at home at the dinner table with his family and the one who is helping advise some major sports events and projects?
Well, it's a difficult balance. My daughter is from my third marriage, and from my second marriage, I had 4 sons, and now I have 7 grandchildren. And I'm at one of my son's homes right now in Los Angeles, and just got to spend the weekend with the family and the grandkids, and it's special. But I look at my sons, and then I work all the time, and I wasn't there all the time. And I look back on it, and man, I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, my sons reassure me, Dad, we love you. I've been there for them, especially as they got older and when they went into college, and they're all in the business now. One's a technical manager, one edits motion pictures, another is one of the lead sales guys for Bleacher Report, and the other is in charge of all the reality TV shows at CBS, Amazing Race, etc. So they've all done well. They've all been in the business, and now they're part of that same grind. And we caution each other. Go remember what happened when Dad's around. I think it's helped them a little bit. And when my daughter came along, I was a little bit more conscious about it. And also it helped is my wife worked with me on a lot of big shows. We did World Cup soccer together. We actually met doing shows for the NFL, in Hawaii and other places. So it's kind of been a whole family thing, and it's definitely been an evolution. And and how I look at it, and how I look at now, especially my sons, who are now going in the business, trying to raise their kids. It's a different perspective, and I try to be able to talk to them and remind them about, wait a minute, let's remember back when Dad couldn't get to your soccer game. Dad wasn't there when you had one of those bad moments, or even good moments. So it's always been interesting balance in our business because most of us are on the road all the time and we're obsessed with what we do. We have to be. And we work 24/7. That's just the way it is, especially when you're doing live sports, where the games are on the weekends. And, I can't tell you how many meals were disrupted or completely canceled because something happened someplace. Because, we're the guys that always have to fix things, especially people like me in operations and engineering. As I used to always open our staff meetings, I'd say, we're just here for the blame.
So when you hear that, and you know that in a way you can see where people are coming from, but that's not always the case. How do you respect yourself in a role that you play where there's so much pressure on you to perform and know that you are doing everything in your power to make it right, but there's always going to be someone out there, or perhaps maybe there isn't, others who want it a certain way?
Look, the pressure, as I watched playoff games, knowing that the Super Bowl is coming on in the next few weeks, not having to be in charge of that is, because I must tell you that, there was probably, I think, 19 Super Bowls I was involved in, and maybe 6 that I had direct, real, serious responsibilities for. And I could never enjoy the moment, to be honest. I could never sleep. I was always attentive, on edge. It was hard for me to enjoy the moment. But now, I'm a consultant, and I can sit back and I look at it and I understand with those that are there that are going through, but I don't have to go through it because in a lot of ways it's agonizing. When the power goes out in New Orleans, who is Sean McManus looking at? Me, okay? And was it my fault? It doesn't matter. I have to fix it. When we had pouring rain at the Super Bowl, it was the year that Prince was doing the halftime, and it rained in Miami. They said it would never rain in Miami, and the power was bad. It's always power, by the way, that gets you. And those moments you're on edge all the time, and it is a very unique pressure because that 100 million plus people are watching what you're responsible for, and that responsibility never leaves your shoulders, and it's always there. And so because of that, it's hard to be able to enjoy the events, but there's also a rush. It's kind of what we're all about. And when the big events happen, we got to be there because that's what we do. I was so blessed and lucky. I did Olympics, I did World Cups, Super Bowls, World Series. My personal sport is baseball. So it's just, yeah, but it's difficult to deal with the pressures of the big moment.
I want to leave you with this last question. And I would think that being able to live part of the year in Kauai takes some of the pressures off of you. What does moving over there for a good chunk of time during the year do for you that you hadn't had the opportunity to do when you were working those humongous events? Now, you're still working a lot of great events, but you're able to do something more now while living in Kauai than you didn't when you were involved in the constant grind.
Well, first off, the setting is gorgeous. And now I can set up kind of a regular regimen. I can exercise, I ride, I got a bike, I got an electric bike. All right, I'm cheating a little bit, but there's a lot of elevation. But I can go for 15 miles. I can go through the beaches. I can go up into the old sugarcane plantation areas, and I can I can just enjoy myself. I mean, Drew Brees has a compound that he's built on the top of the mountain where the real rich guys get to go to. Ride my bike up there, and I probably at his house more than he is, sitting atop of it. But just being able to go up there, having my bottle of water, and looking over that whole area out at the ocean, up into the mountains, and it's just being able to enjoy that moment is something I couldn't do before. And now I reflect, I go back to church now in Kauai, and it's brought God back in my life, and I'm blessed. And by living in Kauai, where my wife and I got married there, I better get this right, 26 years ago, and we've been going back there for a long time, so I'm familiar with the island, and I know all the locals, and I'm a lot more relaxed.
It's a beautiful transformation, and it's a wonderful story. The many stages of Ken Aagaard. And Ken, I'm so grateful for you to share a couple of those stages with me. Would love to do this again with you. And I know we could talk for hours upon hours, especially we could make it like a fireside chat, considering you've got the fire keeping you warm behind him. Ken, I'm Bryan Fenley. So honored, humbled to have you on for a conversation about your life and the stories that have been a big part of who you are. I'm excited to hopefully meet you down the road, and look forward to hearing more about all the great events you are working on in the near future.
Thank you for the opportunity, Bryan. I enjoyed it.